Hey there, my fellow lunatics, and welcome to Dakon's Madhouse.
Greetings and salutations, everybody, and today we are going to be talking about offhand items. This time, we are talking about them at their maximum level. So I'm going to be assuming that you're endgame and that you are trying to find the best items for your best endgame builds. Let's see what's good and what's not, but first, real quick, let's go over the details. Number 1. All items are fully upgraded to level 18. Number 2, I am assuming that the player is at the end game and trying to figure out what is the best weapon overall. Number 3, different playstyles can alter the rankings of various weapons for different people. I try to stay neutral and take all playstyles into account. Hopefully, I don't let my biases show too much. And number 4, all items are reinforced, because in the end game, you have no excuse not to keep your gear reinforced at all times. Starting with the S tier. This is the top tier. These are going to be our super versatile items, the best of the best, things that are used in multiple builds. A tier, those are going to be excellent items. Top tier for at least one build, and often versatile, but not necessarily the best of the best. B tier are strong items that you really aren't going to complain about, but they have limited use or are eventually outclassed by other items. C tier, these items are fine. You can't go wrong with them, but you will eventually replace them, or you are going to replace them pretty quickly. D tier, maybe these items have a little bit of a niche use, but otherwise they're really not that useful or worthwhile. And F tier, the item is trash, it's not any good, don't bother using it. Alright, first item on our list, we have Azios's Dash Feather, and this one is going right into A tier. Even at the end game, it has an excellent movement speed boost. The dash is still really effective, even at the end game, and most people have been using this since the beginning, so they're pretty used to the dash effect. Next, we have got the Belt Pocket, and this one's going right into F tier. The item slots don't upgrade when you upgrade the items, which I think is kind of silly. I think that if you really want to make backpacks viable in the end game, when you level up the items, they need to get additional inventory slots. But right now they don't. Maybe after the 1.0 update that'll change, but at the time of this recording, that's not how it works. So as a result, this Belt Pocket is completely useless at the end game, as is most backpacks, to be honest with you. Moving on to the Blue Leather Tome, and this one is our first S tier item. Just like at the starting levels, even at the end game, this thing levels up real well, gives you a massive ranged bonus, and is used in a variety of different end game range builds. The Cave Pouch goes straight into F tier for basically the same reasons as the Belt Pocket. Next, we've got the Caveling ID, and I'm going to put this one into B tier. It's a really good item. In fact, if you're going with a dodge build, this is probably your best in slot for your offhand. But because it's only good for a dodge build, it won't enter those A or S tiers. The Concealed Blade is next, and this one is going straight into S tier. Crit chance is always useful, and you will always find a use for the Concealed Blade in whatever build you're doing. The Core Iris is next, and this one I'm putting into A tier. It is useful in mining builds, it is useful in melee builds, and you will find it in a variety of those builds, but it's useless for ranged builds, so it just can't quite reach that S tier level. However, it is versatile and deserves its A tier rating. The Crystal Meteor Chunk, this one I feel like straddles the line between A tier and S tier. The big thing that I think keeps it out of S tier is its drawback. It has a great bonus for just raw damage, which makes it useful in practically every build. But because of that armor penalty that you get, that really is what keeps it out of S tier. If it didn't have that penalty, this would absolutely be an S tier item. All right, the Explorer's Backpack is next. I'm going to put this into D tier because it is the best backpack for movement speed. However, it has a massive slot penalty for the inventory space. So the only reason you would want to use this is if you're trying to get the maximum possible movement speed for a build. Otherwise, unless you're going for that gimmick, there's no reason to use the Explorer's Pack. Gorm's Stomach Bag falls into D tier for pretty much the same reason, except for trying to go for a max hit point build. If you are going for the highest hit points you can possibly get, you're going to want to equip Gorm's Stomach Bag, but you're going to take that huge hit toward your inventory slots as a result. That's why it goes into D tier. It's just way too gimmicky. Now, the Golden Jellyfish I'd considered putting into F tier, but I am actually going to put it into D tier. And it is really good with its hit point regeneration. However, the Oracle deck has better hit point regeneration, though the Oracle deck is significantly harder to get your hands on. So if you're going for some sort of hit point regen and you don't have the Oracle deck, you're going to want to go for the Golden Jellyfish. Otherwise, go for the Oracle deck and don't worry about this thing. The Iron Shield is going into F tier. It has no real bonuses. It's just a terrible shield. There are so many better shields at max level. And don't bother. Don't waste your time with this one. The Lantern. This one is going into D tier just because of that hit point bonus that it provides. It is gimmicky for the hit point builds. Otherwise, you're not going to need this Lantern. There are other lanterns that you can use. Morpha's Bubble Bag. I'm putting this one into A tier. Personally, I think this is the best bag in the game, and even when it's leveled up to max, it remains the best bag, just like it was at the starting levels. But like I said in the starting level video, I don't really feel like Morpha's Bubble Bag deserves an S tier rating, because it is limited in what it is able to provide, and is not good for all builds. It just happens to currently be the best bag in the game. And that is why the Octarine Bag goes into B tier, because it has the same amount of slots as Morpha's Bubble Bag, but its bonuses aren't quite as universally useful as Morpha's are. So if Morpha's not worth S tier, then this one's got to be worth B tier. All right, and our first C tier item is going to go with the Octarine Shield. It's craftable, which makes it useful. It's got a decent attack speed boost. Can't go wrong with that. And it's a pretty good overall shield. In fact, I think it's one of the better ones myself. However, once you get into these endgame builds, you're going to be a little bit more specialized. While this one is a bit more universal, and that's why I'm putting it into C tier, it is going to get replaced by one of the other shields more likely once you go to a more specific kind of build. Omeroth's Beak. This one, I think, straddles the line again between A tier and S tier. I'm going to put it into A tier just because I don't use it as often in melee builds as I do the blue tome in ranged builds. I find that when you're doing melee builds, there's often other offhand items that provide better overall bonuses. Although sometimes that is not true. Sometimes it is Omeroth's Beak. But because that happens enough in my builds, I put it into A tier. Although I can completely see how it would be considered an S tier item. The Oracle deck is next, and this one I am putting into B tier. It's useful if you want to have a hit point regen build, and it's great in multiplayer games if you just want to provide some additional healing support. But otherwise, that's pretty much it. However, since it is a really good hit point regen item, it is useful in at least one endgame build, making it worthy of B tier. The Orb Lantern is our first A tier lantern. And this one I think is the best mining or melee lantern. It's kind of like the Core Iris, but lantern. So if you're using a melee build or you're using a mining build, this is the lantern that you're going to want. However, if you are using literally any other build, you're going to want the Pearl Lantern. And I'm putting this one into A tier because, again, it's not better than the mining lantern. It's just it's its opposite, essentially. So if you're melee mining, you want this lantern. Otherwise, you want the Pearl Lantern. All right, and now our favorite pet rock goes right into D tier. It's good in a couple of very specific builds, but otherwise it's just really gimmicky, and you're really only using it if you're trying to max out your pet build. And since endgame pet builds are just not really that viable right now, I'm hoping that may change. But as of right now, a pet build's really not the best for bosses, although it's not bad for wilderness stuff. But that just really puts this thing down into D tier. Although I do like it, I won't lie. The same kind of goes with the Pumpkin Lantern. It's really good for its hit point regen, but it goes into D tier just because it again is only good for that hit point regen build, and that's not really a viable endgame build. It's more of a gimmick build. I personally really like the Pumpkin Lantern, but I would like to rank. In fact, I originally ranked it as B tier, but then I was like, no, you're being biased. It doesn't deserve to be in B tier. Next, finally, we have this awful item, the Royal Gel, going right into F tier. It doesn't provide any decent bonuses. Its only good thing is putting you part of the slime faction, and who cares at endgame? You're killing all the slimes anyway. Now we have the Scarlet Backpack, which I'm going to throw into B tier. It's got better bonuses than the Octarine Backpack. However, it has 5 fewer slots. So that is really kind of why I'm ranking it B tier, because it's kind of a lateral move from the Octarine bag. You sacrifice the slots, but you gain better abilities. So what do you want to do? The Scorching Aegis. Now this one could be arguable to be C tier, but personally I am sticking it into D tier. Not because it's a bad shield. It actually is a good shield, and if you want to go with shields in general, this is not a bad one to equip. It's just, most people go for the Scorching Aegis because it is burn abilities. And like I said in my other video about these offhand items, if you're going to go with a burn build, you're going to want the Smithing Glove, not this shield. So this shield is kind of gimmicky as a result. However, I can see arguments for it to be in C tier. So please leave a comment below if you think that it actually should be in C tier and let me know why. Or do you think it should be higher than C tier? Again, let me know. The Sentry Shield. Well, this one's going into C tier because, frankly, I don't know much about it. I talked about this in my video for the starting level for these items, but I really haven't played much with the Sentry Shield, and I don't feel comfortable really giving it a proper rating. So I'm just going to stick it into C tier, and I'm going to let you guys tell me, is this good endgame shield? Let me know in the comments below. The Small Lantern. This one's going right into F tier. It has no value at all in the end game. It provides no bonuses. There's no reason to level it up because it doesn't improve its glow in any real way. It's just a terrible, terrible thing to use. Don't bother with the Small Lantern. The Smithing Gloves are going right into B tier. This is best in slot for a burn build, but because it's only good for a burn build, that's why it's going into B tier. And we're going to finish up with a bit of bad news. We have got the Swift Feather, which is going right into F tier. There's really no reason to use the Swift Feather when you're at the end game, when you can be using the Azios Dash Feather. The Toxic Defender is also going into F tier because it is just an awful shield. I don't really see its use, and there are much better ways to apply poison. Don't bother with this shield. It's really not that good. The Turtle Shell is going into D tier entirely because it is useful for one gimmick only, and that is a boss damage reduction build. And it is the best in slot if that's what you're going to try to do, but that build is just not good. I've messed with those builds before, and I do not care for them. If you think that a boss damage reduction build is good, leave a comment disagreeing with me. Let me know what you think. And finally, we have got the Wooden Shield, which is going right into F tier as well. And it's a great starting item, but by the end game, it's just outclassed by pretty much everything else. So, do you agree with me? Do you disagree with me? Leave a comment below and let me know what you think. And that wraps everything up for today's episode. If you enjoyed yourself, please be sure to hit that like button, subscribe if you're interested in watching my videos regularly, and if you feel like adding some extra support to the channel, you can always join our Patreon or become a YouTube member. There are links in the description. Thanks again for watching. You're all wonderful, and until next time, stay crazy.